we initially met because I asked the internet, like, hey, like, what should I know about world building and like game development? And the internet was like, talk to Wendell. Like, how, how did you take this concept of world building and like in D&D and all these other games and bring that into, personal development and change? Like what sparked that
Well,
development?
yeah. Well, I mean, so the easy answer is there was no spark. It's just being me long enough, doing both of those, and looking at my hands, being like, "Wait a second,
Love it.
why is the right hand doing this and the left hand doing that?" Like, just inside of myself, it was always happening. But there still was like a wall. I was treating them as like two separate continents, and then
Hmm.
kind of in a Minneapolis, St. Paul kind of, I'm like, this is tedious. Let's see what happens when we don't have this arbitrary wall. Let's see if there's actually sort of generative connections. And just
Love
in
it.
my personal life, there were, again, I keep joking that if I ever write a memoir, it's going to be some of my best memories never happened. Because like some of the most transformative educational experiences that have happened for me have happened at the role-playing table.
Mm.
And of course, the big brain-blowing learning there was you don't need to go outside to get the learning. Now, even though I've just spent maybe the better part of 45 minutes being like, I do think people need to go outside more, the thing that got me going was there is a lot more context of just purely inner work that you can do that will make transformations that will change your outer life, just focusing on that.
Mhm.
This is literally about a year and some change ago that really I like committed to this idea. But it only works, this is the thing that I kind of learned over time, if your inner world feels like a real place.
Mm.
So some people go to their inner world and it's just like, oh yeah, it's that weird nibbly, well, it's just a whiteboard in there and it's just kind of a higgledy-piggledy of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, that's not going to feel real. Your outer world isn't going to change to match that inner world because the outer world isn't, I mean, in a lot of ways it is higgledy-piggledy nonsense, but there's no coherence. In Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind, like the magic system is built around this thing called sympathy, where it's like, oh yeah, if you have blood and water, I have a sympathetic link because they're both water.
Mhm.
And if you do magic to one, it can like send one over the other. I do believe, this is my woo side coming out, that like the inner world and the outer world do have a sympathetic link, but only as much as you can model your inner world on sort of success structures in the outer world, because our inner world affects how we see reality.
Yeah.
And that's what I was essentially experiencing. Like I would play a game and I would leave the game and see the outer world different and then make different choices. It's not
Yeah.
that the inner world changed the outer world, but just suddenly the quest threads popped up differently. I could see, oh, you're a quest giver, and I couldn't see that before without having already experienced like a bit of that in internal story and do that. And so it's also, when the next level is also building your team. So like the win condition that I want for people in Mastering Allyship now is find your superpower, generate the space for that 1 hour a week, find the people who like playing the game that you like. Those are your allies playing the ally game. Connect with the people who would be transformed by your thing having. If you just got that, that's a dope time
Yeah.
for anyone's life. Just
That's
the ability to recognize who
that's
their
such a
people
powerful
are.
thing. Like that, those steps are so powerful. And like, I don't know, I spent like a decade like pushing down like all my strengths and being like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. that's not on the path, Uh,
Right?
yeah.
Yep. Yep.
It's
And
crazy how
so,
much time we spend fighting ourselves instead of just being like, oh, like it would be easy if I did this thing that I've been good at since I was a kid.
well, and it's fun because it's one all the time. Like anytime that I see someone stuck, I'm like, great. Just sight unseen, you are in a free body diagram where energy is going this way and energy is going this way at equal measure. Don't even have to know anything more about it because the universe does not like things staying still. And so when I ask the question, well, why would someone be pulling against this? The answer for both of them is, well, they want to go this way because they think this is nice, and this one wants to go this way because they think this is nice. Depending on where you put the driver of the car will determine your level of frustration. If being still is chill, you've already won. Like that's one of the lessons I want to tell people is you do not have to do this. No one is making you be an ally. No one is making you do any of this. This is completely and utterly optional. And
Yeah.
you can just sit on that sort of Taoist Wu Wei. The tensions are going both ways and you sit here and you recognize that stillness is great. and you're done. But if you move your car driver to the part that's moving away from allyship, you will immediately, and then choose that they're like succeeding. They're like, oh my God, I'm doing great. This is an amazing day. This guy keeps trying to do that. And every single day I show up and I stop him. We're the Rebel Alliance. We're the best. We're great. We're totally doing this amazing thing. And when you can find that perspective, inhabit it, and then just shift it and be like, yo, what if the real Rebel Alliance look was being on this side? Your parts go, I mean, if you do the job right, go, oh yeah, that seems cool. Or, oh, we don't have to worry about this. Because so much of the stuff that happens on the, I guess this is left side, right side. I don't know if I'm being mirrored over there, but on the bad side, it's all made up, does come from childhood. So our adult brain is like, I just want to do adulting and be successful and do all this stuff. And our child brain is like, we've never done any of that. The only thing we know how to do is play games and have fun and hang out with our friends and not get more traumatized. So we're just going to keep doing that. And then you look at adults and it's like, yeah, I see that still happening. You're still doing that stuff. And it makes sense because it's worked. It's worked for the whole life. And so the reason that last module is the dead self, it's a very powerful module because that's usually the one. If anyone makes it to that, which is why I was so frustrated when people didn't, a huge shift happens because that part that they've been pushing back that whole time not only just gets to show up, but the energy that it took to push them back, they get to have. Now that they get to see them, they get to recognize, actually, that thing is dope and I love it. So now that part's working towards you. So you end up with this like utter energy shift, but it breaks your whole life. I will not, it breaks your entire worldview to have that happen. And suddenly you're like, I hate this relationship I'm in. I hate this job that I'm in. And I think that's even also the part where I realize I'm like, oh, I crammed in a proton torpedo of a course into this. And people's intuition were like, but I do not want my life exploded. Like, I just wanted to be like kind of nicer to people. And I'm like, no, break your whole life.
Flip everything upside down.
And I'm like, maybe that wasn't the most responsible thing to do.
That's
like the pendulum swing, and I do think this is really important for course creators because, again, the very act of building it is dope. I think everyone should build a course just to encounter themselves with their knowledge. One of my Oracle deck scheme, its largest version is, I'd love to teach people how to build Oracle decks of their lived experience. Just straight up say, like, all right, we're going to start from birth to now, and we're going to actually create your own wisdom deck so that you don't have to be like, what am I about? I'm just like, just draw your cards. You know they're right because they're you. Like, let's just stop this whole randomness. And so in that same way, I think building a course kind of has the same effect for people. Like, you really have to get your stuff down. You really have to be able to like look at yourself as a personal development exercise for yourself. Primo, you will gain infinite value out of doing that. And if you also want to gain other value,
it's like
there's some other stuff you have to do.
There's value even if you don't sell it ever, but also if you do sell it, awesome.
If you sell it, you will have sold it for some very specific, having aligned with some very specific success structures around how your personal development journey affects essentially the world. Like, that's sometimes really hard for people where they're like, it's not selling, or maybe I'm just too weird. I'm like, it's not that you're too weird, but you're not weird in the right place. You haven't moved to the place where your weirdness becomes leveraged. And again, that's really hard to kind of bring the conversation back to the world building question. If the interior world is a world and it also has success structures, it's like, okay, cool. Here's where the rich people live in my inner world. Your ability to go to that place in your mind is your ability to go to that place in the external world. You go there and you're like, oh, for me, wealth, quality, value is this. I should go to the places in the external world who agree with me. And then it becomes the easiest thing in the world. So your ability to like map that out, and I've pivoted the course also to kind of doing one-on-one again. Like, I started doing one-on-one with Mastering Game of Life. Then weirdly, I built this course for allyship, and now I've kind of gone back to doing one-on-one for Mastering Allyship. And it's been really cool because it's just all world building at this point. Like, I'll set a made-up mountain. I'll be like, here's the top of the mountain. If you become an ally, what did that look like? What did that feel like? What experiences would you have? We sort of negotiate like, okay, what was the most fun way that you could have gone up that mountain knowing that you already succeeded? Great. Only do that. Now, who are the fuckers who are going to say, we absolutely don't want to go up that mountain because they're already at the top of a mountain that they love? Cool. What would make them want to leave that mountain and go up? And it's just negotiating that. And by the time that we leave, every week I sort of add more to that world and make it more rich and add more characters to it. So even when it leaves, it has kind of a life of its own. As they go out into the world, I'm like, yeah, so how did you see the world a little bit differently, having moved these things around? And just by creating that feedback loop with people, some really cool transformative stuff can happen. But the big lesson that I learned through this was there are some parts of your process that you can't engineer away. And being like deeply sort of open to that and cognizant of that is key. Like my ability to help someone build a world via content in a video and at distance is greatly diminished from my ability to do that in person. And
yeah, for sure.
I'm not even sure why, but knowing that has, I think, taken a little bit of pressure off of me to like get this course right. It's like, no, I need to get people to talk to me one-on-one is really the answer. And that's a different game. And so that's really where I've been in the last like couple of weeks, is being like, okay, this is all part of a larger experience. And how do you make that path up that mountain towards the thing that I want engaging and fun? And again, somehow it's going to be Pokemon and Harvest Moon. I don't know how, but just sight unseen, it's going to be those two.